Let's bring in Democratic Senator Chris Coons from Delaware. He's a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and he was just in the region about a week and a half ago. Senator, what do you know for a fact about this explosion in Poland? Was it, in fact, a Russian rocket or missile that struck and killed 2 individuals in Poland? And what's your reaction?
Well, Jake, if this were an intentional missile strike by Russia on Poland, our vital NATO ally, that would be a major escalation. But we do not know, I do not know at this hour exactly what happened in the southeastern corner of Poland earlier today. Press accounts state that 2 people were killed when something fell out of the sky, either the parts of a missile that had been intercepted or a missile strike. So first, I think we need to investigate more thoroughly and make sure that we, the United States, and folks in the international media know exactly what happened. And second, we need to give some time for our close and vital ally, Poland, whose national security leadership is currently still meeting, to come forward and say what they believe has happened and what response they're calling for. Poland's been one of the strongest and best allies in supporting Ukraine, welcoming millions of Ukrainian refugees, some of whom we met with when I was in Poland, and providing a critical base for material and supplies to flow into Ukraine. So they are all in supporting Ukraine in their fight against Russian aggression. I think we need to give them the time to make sure this is thoroughly and properly investigated before we jump to a conclusion.
Sure, and I just heard from a different congressional source who told me that it's unclear right now whether it was a Russian missile or a Ukrainian interceptor missile or both. But let me ask you, just devil's advocate, what's the difference? If the Russians are firing missile after missile after missile into Ukraine, onto the civilian population of Ukraine, even if it was a Ukrainian air defense system that landed in Poland, it's still true then that Russians are firing missiles over Poland. It's not the first time we've heard of Russians invading Polish airspace. And also, they're creating this entire situation.
That's right, Jake. The unjustified, unprovoked, immoral invasion of Ukraine by Russia has been denounced by the United Nations General Assembly, obviously by the United States and our NATO partners. And recently, a vote was taken on the liability of Russia, Russia's responsibility to pay for the harm, the costs imposed by its aggression. It was overwhelmingly endorsed by those members of the UN who voted. Many abstained, but those who voted pro or con, it was overwhelmingly in favor of liability for Russia. So whether or not this was a Russian missile or a Ukrainian interceptor, the people who were killed, the property that was damaged, that's just one more outcome from Russia's unjustified aggression in Ukraine.
The tides have been turning in favor of Ukraine over the past few months on the ground. Just last week, Ukrainians won back Kherson from Russian control. Do you think these rockets could be, because there is, without question, even removing this Polish situation from it, there is a barrage, a Russian barrage of missiles against Ukraine right now. Could this be Putin trying to shake up the war? Is it an act of desperation? What's your take?
That's possible. When I was in Kyiv with Senator Portman of Ohio, we visited the headquarters of the National Power Utility. It's a single integrated nationwide grid built under the Soviet system. And the Russians have been targeting the power infrastructure, trying to put millions of Ukrainians into the cold and dark this winter. Winter is very cold in Ukraine. And the administration has just sent to the Senate earlier today a request for supplemental funding to provide humanitarian support for Ukraine, more military support for Ukraine, and budget support for Ukraine. I'm hopeful that my Republican colleagues will join us in funding another round of support for Ukraine so that they can be victorious. The civilians who are at risk here from this latest barrage of Russian missile attacks in central and western Ukraine are partly subject to attack at military sites, but mostly subject to attack at civilian sites, civilian infrastructure like power and water.
So, Senator, let me just tell you, we have some breaking news. The Polish government says that it is invoking Article 4 of the NATO treaty. Article 5, of course, is the one that says if one NATO ally is attacked, it's as if every member of NATO has been attacked. Article 4 is consultation with other NATO partners about what to do next. What is your reaction to that news?
Oh, that conveys that the Poles take this very seriously, and they are calling all NATO members for an emergency consultation to come to a common course of action moving forward. That's a significant step forward. I've been to NATO headquarters twice during the course of this conflict and several times as a senator, and had the opportunity to visit with NATO representatives. We are very well staffed and represented at NATO headquarters. And I know this next step will be an important one. I think that President Biden's leadership on the world stage, strengthening NATO, strengthening the Western response to Russia's aggression in Ukraine, representing us at the G20 in a face-to-face with President Xi of China just in the last few days, and representing us at the Global Climate Summit in Egypt. All of this is a part of his leadership, and strengthening NATO, strengthening our forward deployment of American troops and our investment in common security and common defense is a key part of his accomplishments so far as our president.
Mm-hmm. All right, Democratic Senator Chris Coons from the small wonder state, Delaware. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jake.